Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Be My Guest. We have, of course, another great episode, someone who I am really happy to have on. So, we've talked about in previous episodes, kind of resetting some things, doing some networking during these times. And my guest today is someone who, when this whole thing really started, we got in contact through LinkedIn. I actually had her up on the No Vacancy show. But she's someone who I've stayed in contact. This is back in March, April that we first started talking about getting her on No Vacancy, and she was on the show. So we stayed in contact really through then. And she's honestly become one of my better professional friends. And she's been a really, really important support system to me as we've gone through this. And I hope I've been able to be something like that for her. But really, of all the people that I've spoken to, I was telling her right before the show, there's two people that I've stayed kind of in contact with like that, where I'll check in with them, they'll check in with me, and she is one of them. So Bianca Barga is going to be coming on, and she has a really great story to tell. It really kind of encapsulates a lot of the stuff we've been talking about for the previous 13 episodes, which we're going to get into. But of course, same thing as always, feel free to reach out to me if you want to join the show. Check us out on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the good stuff. Obviously, Apple Podcasts as well. Subscribe, like, comment, all the great stuff. So, without further ado, let me bring on someone who, as I said, I consider a really good professional friend, even though I never met her. One of my better professional friends, even though I've never met her. And you know what? She lives 3,000 miles away from me. So the chances of us ever actually meeting, probably not that good. But she's really, really been a huge help to me. So bring her on, Bianca.
Hi. Of
My
course we're
friend.
gonna meet. Are you
How
kidding
are
me?
you?
We're gonna go back to traveling and we're gonna meet in person for sure.
Well, I'm definitely getting back out to LA. So wherever you are in Cali, I think you're near that area somewhere. I'm going to have to figure
Yeah.
out how to get to you. And we were just talking. You have some family that's the town over to me.
Yes,
Right
yeah,
next door to
yeah.
me. So one way or the other, we're
Small
gonna
world.
get in. We're gonna figure out a way. Although I know it's a lot easier for me to get to New York City than it is to you to get down to LA. So just because it's so freaking far. One time I was in LA, it was like 45 minutes just to go to the next town over. Not used to that. But Bianca, thanks for being my guest today. Really, really appreciate you coming on. As I said, you're someone who I never heard of, never knew, never talked to prior to COVID, and really through the start of COVID, we got in contact and
Yeah.
just stayed in contact, here or there, just every couple of weeks. Hey, how you doing? How's the job search? So I really thank you for being that support system for me and being that open to staying in contact with me because you didn't know who I was.
Yeah, no, same thing. I think it was one of the good things that came from this crazy year is that I really had time to meet people, to talk to people, to hear about people's experiences. So I think this year was nothing short but tragic, but at the same time, a lot of good things came from it.
Yeah.
And you're one of them. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. So, Bianca, let's just start right from the top. You really have a great story to tell. And I said it because I do know your story better than most of the people that I do talk to on this show. So let's start from the top. How'd you get into hospitality? What did you want to do initially? Where'd you end up prior to COVID happening?
I am originally from Brazil. I always wanted to travel the world. I always loved hotels, but I never really left Brazil. And to me, working hospitality was a way for me to travel without leaving Brazil. I had a great chance to work for Sofitel back in Rio. And after a couple of years with the company, I found a position in the US. I had never been in the US, and I applied for it. And my manager said, this is a stretch, but I insisted. And he recommended me. I came to the US first time to move to the States. And I stayed with Sofitel for a while. Then I started moving into smaller hotel companies, always in reservations and revenue. I did a little bit of operations too. Moved to Chicago. So nobody told me that Chicago was that cold. Moved to Chicago, loved it. It was a lot of fun. But after 2 years there, I'm like, okay, maybe I should go somewhere a little bit warmer. Moved to LA, loved it. And I found my place when I moved here. And yeah, my last position, to kind of skip a couple of hotels that I worked at, was with a representation company. They sold technology and sales representation. We had 74 hotels. It had been in business for 30 years. I loved my position. I was their vice president of distribution and performance. Loved it. I really always loved revenue, and that was a combination of revenue, sales, and technology. So to me, it was really almost like a dream job. Fast forward to March this year, we had a lot of hotels in Asia and Europe, and they start, failing to pay us and start to do really bad. So the company decided to pretty much shut down. So now they are not in business anymore. They have a couple of hotels that they own and manage, but the company completely shut down. So that was a shock. I could see it could eventually come, but it was very early on during this whole thing. So it was tough. It was a really tough time. But yeah, so that's me until I met you and we start talking and we got in touch and yeah.
So you really, people talk about the American dream and really, you lived it, right? You come from a country, move to the US, you move around, you move up the corporate ladder, you get a job that you love, that is a place in a place you want to live, an area of the country you want to live. So you really, you made it.
Yeah.
And really at this point, up until, March, things are continuing to look up. March hits, all this stuff starts happening. What's going through your mind?
It was, and again, I am so grateful because I am not someone that I don't have kids. I had my husband that kept his job. So I'm incredibly fortunate. And I just wanted to get it out of the way because there are people that had it a lot harder than me.
Right.
But, from my perspective, it was a big blow to my confidence. There were days that I really didn't even think I was good anymore, what I did, and why did they let me go? And I was working on so much. It's just tough because I had so many projects on my hands, including the Asian hotels that were coming back and reopening. And all of a sudden someone tells you, actually, we don't need you as of next week. And I said, next week? What do you mean I have work to do? So it was really like, I never felt that before. It was crazy. I'm like, how don't you need me anymore? You needed me up until yesterday. So it was a horrible feeling. I was really sad for a long time. I went through a roller coaster of emotions of, worth and if I had chosen the right career. I felt that hospitality betrayed me. I'm like, I given all these years and now you're not, having my back. So it was tough.
And I mean, I think there's a lot of people that feel that way, right? The betrayal, especially.
Yeah.
That this is hospitality overall is a field, an industry you have to put a lot of yourself into. You can't succeed in it without putting a lot of yourself into. And most of the people that are successful to the level that you were successful, that's what drives you. The passion for the industry is what drives you. And for a lot of people, including yourself, including myself, it's hard, it's hard to put it this way, but the industry did turn its back on us in a way. Not that it was anybody's fault.
Correct.
We're not blaming anybody or anybody out there because, decisions had to be made. What are you doing? There's literally no revenue coming in. There's no money to pay people. There's no money to pay bills. So tough calls had to be made, but it still stings. So as you're going through these various emotions, and I like that you touch on the point about you feeling not good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why you, what's wrong with you type of thing. Because I think a lot of people feel that way, even though we all know that it wasn't our fault, that it was nothing to do with us personally, our performance. It's really hard to separate that knowledge from the emotions. So how did you kind of work through those early few weeks, early months as you're feeling this?
Yeah, I tried to stay positive as much as I could. I had incredible support from my husband, from my family, but it was tough. I managed to get it done, to stay positive, I'd say for maybe 70% of the time. But there were very dark times that even personally, I felt so attached to who I was professionally. So to me, when I lost that identity, when I was not working and nobody wanted me, it was a very conflicting time, but what I did is that I tried to, again, stay in touch with what was happening. So that's the way we met each other too, because you had me on No Vacancy, which was amazing. And I got so many people reaching out to me because of that, really reading so many articles, doing trainings, watching webinars, because it was important to me to not lose touch with the industry. A lot of people might think that nothing is happening because hotels are closed and people are furloughed. And I think it's quite the contrary. I think this period accelerated a lot of changes, a lot of merges, a lot of new technology. So to me, I think I realized early on that it was important to stay connected with what was happening in the industry. So I forced myself every day to look on LinkedIn for an hour, just spend an hour, connect with people, send your resume, watch webinars, do trainings. So I was really motivated. Did that work the whole time? Hell no. There were times that I'm like, screw this. Today I'm not going to do it. I am going to sleep until, 2 p.m. But for the most part, I really try to stay motivated.
And I think it's important to say that, listen, that's okay. Those days that you're feeling that way, right? That's perfectly okay. There's
Yeah.
nothing,
Yeah.
there's times where I get this way. And I know a lot of other people do, where if I'm not doing something progressive, if I'm not doing that hour of LinkedIn and so forth, that I'm like, damn, I'm falling behind. I'm slacking off. I'm just being lazy. When in reality, you just need that moment to reset and that moment to recharge. And it's actually better and healthier for you to take that one day and sleep until 2 p.m. versus forcing your way through. Not that you can do it 4, 5, 6 days in a row, but if it's
Yeah.
1 day, 2 days, that's probably healthier, and it's going to be more productive for you to do that and then hit it again the next day or the day after positively than to burn out essentially. And burnout while unemployed is a real thing.
Oh my gosh, it's absolutely a
It's
real
such
thing.
a real thing.
And I know you went through the same thing. I had 25 interviews. I was in the process after passing the first phase with 4 companies. I actually was before we got on. I have my notebook with all the notes that I put together, that I prepared myself, and I would put some songs to pump me up before the interview. And it's like when you receive the call, or sometimes you don't even receive the call, that they're like, oh, we chose a new path, or actually your profile doesn't match what we're looking for. Excuse me, you interviewed me 8 times and now my profile doesn't match what you're looking for. It's like, really? It's so it is crazy. I mean, really, these 8 months have been insane. But I learned a lot from it. And now in hindsight, it was a lot of teachable moments. And I'm happy now because I'm sure we're going to talk about it. I did eventually find a job, but there were some jobs that I was applying for that, did I want those jobs? No, but I needed it. So I was applying for it and I was pretending that I wanted it, which I'm sure it's going to happen to a lot of us because we don't even have the luxury of applying for a job that we want. We need to apply for jobs that are out there, which are, very little. So it's crazy to think back, and I was reading through my notes, like, the things that I kind of maybe enhanced a little bit to make myself look better for something that I didn't truly want. So
Right.
it's quite the journey.
And it's got to be, another. You talk about the kick in the ego at the start of this. Well, I'm sure that's another kick in the ego that you're like, I'm applying to jobs I don't even want, and I can't get them. So what do you, every time you get that rejection, what's going through your mind?
It was, first rejection. I'm like, fine, okay, I can live without that. I'd say there was one job okay, so let's talk about the jobs that I didn't want. It was tough because I had maybe that overconfidence that I'm like, I got this. This is way beyond, my experience, blah, blah, blah. Well, no. The truth is there are a lot of people that are really good out in the market, willing to take a huge pay cut. So the competition is fierce. And that's why, to people that are listening to this, it does matter to stay connected with what's happening, to make yourself relevant, to not, sleep until 2 p.m. for these 8 months or for whatever many months you don't find a job. It's important to stay connected because these interviews really made me realize that I thought I was ahead of the game. No, there were people that were way ahead of me. So it was good because it kept me, again, it pushed me to stay on and try to become a better version of what I thought I was, professionally, and it was good. There was one job in particular that I really wanted, and that one really hurt because I still think that I was really good for the job. And that was a tough one to swallow. It took me a couple of days of eating ice cream for breakfast to get over it.
And again, that's okay, right? That's okay because it is a kick in the ego, right? I mean, I could
Yeah.
say a lot more negative words of where it's a kick into, but it hurts. I
Yeah.
feel that way, and I've applied for jobs that I thought I was overqualified for, but certainly qualified for, and barely even got a call back. And it's hard to not take that personally, even though, like you said, there's probably 50 to 100 other people that are as qualified, if not more qualified, willing to apply and potentially take the position for less money than you want to take it for. So again, it goes back to getting laid off in the original spot. It may not be about you, but it's hard to not take it personally. It's very hard to separate those two things.
Yeah, it is.
That's all you can really say. But you made a great point about pushing through and staying on top and staying within the industry, right? Because it can be very easy to let those negative emotions take you over. And a lot of the stuff that you've done, again, you were a VP, right? So you were really up there and you earned that spot. And when you get to that position, you have the knowledge you have and you earn that spot, it's also very difficult to turn that off, I feel, right? It's very difficult to sit there and say, well, I can't use these skills that I've developed for the last 5, 10, 15, however many years you've been developing these skills for. And that's why, I remember your interview on No Vacancy because you were one of the first ones I booked, and everyone remembers their first few times, you're like my interview initiation. And you just brought so much great knowledge that even to this day, we've had people on that haven't touched on some of the things you touched on. So I can only imagine how hard it was for you to, I'm sure that was fun to talk about on the show, but then you go back and you're not using these skills again. So how did you get through that? I mean, how did you get through this? I want to go do revenue. I want to do what I've done and what I'm good at.
Yeah, it was, sometimes I would watch people on even bigger platforms talk about things that I'm like, are you kidding me? It was all about, shaking your confidence. But I knew the time would come. I knew my skills would be used. I just had, as cliche as it sounds, but I did have faith that something would come along and someone would appreciate what I had. I really did. And even some of the jobs, not all of the jobs that I was part of the process of, told me, but a lot of them, and some really good people told me, you are amazing. Do not let this, kind of upset you and make you give up. You are amazing. So that helped me a lot. And honestly, some of these people inspired me to also be a better manager for whenever I'm ready to hire someone, and hopefully that will be soon. But to really pay attention during the process of the way you treat people, the way you follow up with them. It was really, to me, a big lesson this year of things that you should not do, things you should do, and people leading you on sometimes throughout the process, and you're like, oh yeah, amazing, and then you don't get the job. So I think it was. I had faith, and there were some really good people along the way that kept me positive.
Yeah, and it goes back to that support system that we've talked about in past shows, right? Wherever you can find that support, whether it be a family member or a friend or a random guy in Jersey on LinkedIn.
There you go.
You
yeah.
can find the support somewhere. And again, you have been and continue to be a huge support for me. So yes, first, let me congratulate you on the new position. Very happy for you. And honestly, the day that you texted me and said you got a position, man, that was some of the best news I've heard in months, because we had been going back and forth and sharing these type of emotions and stories with each other. And I knew how hard it was on you. And it was just so great to see. So real quick, you started end of November, early December, was it?
2 weeks ago. Yep. 2 weeks ago.
So, and we're filming this in December, obviously. Yeah. So this comes out, it'll be January, February, March, somewhere along those lines. But we're filming this in December, where I'm sitting in snow and you're sitting in nice California heat. But what did you do in that time between March and December? So what is that, 9 months or so? What did you do to keep your mind up? Maybe that was even professionally, just maybe personally. What did you do to have fun?
I'd say that at first I was really, kind of, as you said, we have a lot of knowledge in our heads, and I just wanted to keep that going. So I really invested a lot of time on LinkedIn, on connecting with people, on doing podcasts, on touching base with previous coworkers. I'd say probably after the fourth process that I was a part of and I didn't get the job, I said, you know what? I mean, screw this. I am just going to have fun and enjoy this time off. I've never not worked in my life. So I said, okay, I'm going to have fun. My husband was forced to take some vacation too. So we decided to travel, and we went to national parks, which was amazing. It's something that I had never done in my life. I mean, I visited here and there, but just in passing. We really explored some national parks. I love to travel. That's my passion in life. So it was incredible. And the moment that I kind of disconnected, things start happening again. I think that I was just so focused. I need to find a job by this date. It's going to happen by this date. And the loss of control to me was, again, another lesson that there were things that I could not control. It was going to happen when it was supposed to happen. And no matter how much time I spent on LinkedIn, it was just, not supposed to be. Right. So I think the moment that I decided okay, I'm going to have fun and enjoy this time, it might never happen again. My attitude got a lot better. And I think my luck, started changing too. So I'm very fortunate because there were a lot of struggles during this year, but I've had a lot of good moments too.
I love that. I love that. And you can see and even almost hear the mind switch, even as you're saying it in a sentence, of just that almost relief of release, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk about your traveling. So we've been speaking throughout, and you have traveled to different places, and you've done it safely.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So what are some of the things you think of when you hear that travel has to be so shut down? I'm going to say a couple of things here. I'm going to give you a couple of questions. One, that people think travel has to be shut down. Two, how did you feel when you were traveling? Did you feel safe because you were taking care of yourself, or were others around you being good? And three, does it frustrate you when you see people that are not following protocols because you know that it's going to keep travel stopped for longer?
Yes. So I'm going to start from the third question. Yes, it does frustrate me. I feel that in comparison to what we could be going through, this is so minimal. To wear a mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. I mean, for God's sake, let's just do it. Just do it. I don't understand why people cannot follow these rules. It's simple. So that does frustrate me. I felt safe. I'm actually getting a COVID test right after this because I'm going to visit my family in Brazil. And everybody had it, but my mom, who I'm going to stay with. So we're trying to be as cautious as we can. So we're going to take a COVID test before we go. I felt really safe. I think probably the destination that I've been to that I felt the safest was Hawaii, which, from a traveler's point of view, it's a little bit trickier to get there because you need a negative COVID test 3 days before the trip. It takes a little bit of work. But once you're there, you know that there is very little chance for someone else to have COVID because everybody went through a test. So I think that it's their island, so it's easier to do that. But I think they did it right. I had a wonderful time in Hawaii, and I recommend anybody that wants to put a little bit of work to try to go. The prices, one thing that they're doing is they drop the rates, not selling out the house, but they drop the rates to make it attractive enough for people to come. I could never spend the time that I spent in Hawaii if it was normal time because it's so expensive. Right. So I think, again, it's allowing people that have that flexibility and that put some money aside to maybe travel to experience that, and they're doing it the right way. So I think that it's a shame that so much is still closed, and especially in California, to me, what frustrates me the most is that I know hotels are opening and closing, and that kills the staff morale. It kills revenues. It's just, we need to kind of put something a little bit more, strategic together for businesses. But I do believe that we can travel before we think that we can. I've been on many flights. I really feel safe. I think everybody is going above and beyond to put things in place and to show you that they're putting things in place. So I'm very positive about traveling. And I think that, as you said, some people don't follow the rules, but they get called out too. I've seen people getting called out in public, which is great.
As they should,
maybe I have called out some people too. But I really hope that people feel safe to start traveling soon.
Yeah, because that's what's going to bring all of this back, right? This whole industry is going to come back, and this whole morale, and the economy really runs heavily through travel, right? We've talked about this on No Vacancy a lot, but not turning this into an economics class. How much has traveling helped keep yourself sane?
100%. That's all that kept me sane. I could not have, even when we were in a more serious lockdown, we tried to go to the beach for the day, just to go in the car and just get our minds out of everything. So I highly recommend it. If you cannot go far, if you don't want to get on a plane, get on your car, go somewhere, just do something, because it's what kept us sane throughout the year. I don't think I could have done it without, for sure.
Now, what about somebody that, you mentioned prior, you don't have any kids right now. Obviously, you didn't have a job at the time, so you had a little more freedom, a little more flexibility to travel. What about someone that may be tied down a little bit more with kids, with potentially still having a job? What would you recommend to them to find that same sort of peace that you were able to find through all of this?
One thing that I'm grateful for the time that I had this year is that I got back in touch with things that I was passionate about, and I didn't necessarily had time before to dedicate myself to, like painting. I always loved art. I love art history. I'm always reading about it. So I started reading a lot about it, and I decided to paint. So I started painting again, and I found out that I'm a horrible painter. So I
After the
actually
show, I want to see a picture of one after the
it
show.
is so bad. It is so bad. But hey, now I know. I always wondered. I'm like, I think I would be good because I have an artistic eye. No, I suck. It's horrible. So I'm glad I tried because now I can get it out of the way and never do it again. I had fun trying to do it, but then people would ask, "Can I see it?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to see it." But again, I think really getting in touch with things that give you joy, give you pleasure, and it doesn't have to be something spending money or necessarily getting out of the house. It's really, I start watching documentaries about history. I love history. I never, because when we study, you're about the same age as me. When we went to school, we would read books, and books didn't do it for me. So now you can watch YouTube. You can put Second World War and any subject you want on YouTube. They have everything. I would spend hours watching history videos, and I'm like, this is so good. The kids have it so good today. Any subject they can put on YouTube and learn about it. So I really think when people told me I have nothing to do, I'm like, there's so much to do. Even if you're home locked, it gets boring sometimes, but there is still a lot to do.
Yeah, it's all that goes kind of back to that mindset we were talking about earlier. You can take what's happening as just very. I mean, it is. It's a very negative, depressing
Yeah.
environment that we live in. But what are you going to do to change it to a positive? And it could just be reading a book, watching a TV show, YouTubing a bunch of stuff that you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be
Yep.
history. It could be anime. It could be baseball. It could be anything.
Anything.
But you're right. There's so much available at our fingertips, whether it be on the computer or on these things. You can
Yep.
find the world in your palm.
Yep.
And that's a great, you have this time to reset and reestablish and find some things you were passionate about. Bianca found that she is a terrible painter. I still hold judgment on that statement until I see a painting, but,
Oh.
that at least she had that opportunity, and, you can see even the passion coming out in that and the smile that it brings out her. So try to find something that brings out that smile in you. And if you don't know, just start trying different things.
Yeah.
I've tried different things. Most of them I've not liked. Most of them I've been terrible at. A couple that I've picked up and I have liked, and I'll try to keep doing them through COVID. So tell us about the new job, Bianca. What'd you get into? How did you come about it? And how's it started?
So I talked to this guy back in February. I found his technology and I got in touch with him. I'm like, hey, this is amazing. I'd love to, show this to our hotels. Maybe we can start working together. And then COVID hit, and that never happened. So I did a podcast with someone from SHR, Jason, and I talked about technology and what hotels should look for when buying technology. And I talked about chatbots, which is something that I truly believe is the future of communication, especially for hotels. So I talked about it. Well, he was watching, and he contacted me because of that. And he said, hey, I watched your podcast. We're actually looking for someone in the US to represent us. So I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So it was really chance. I went through the interview process, and it was something that I wanted to transition into. I've always been in hospitality. I wanted to stay in hospitality, but I wanted to move my role a little bit more towards technology. So it was perfect. So I'm like, this has to be. I had a good feeling about it too. When you know in your heart, I'm like, I think this is going to happen, and it did. So they are AI chatbots, hospitality company. They specialize in AI. In hotels, and they are all pre-stay. So they help hotels alleviate the burden of the front desk of answering day-to-day questions. And they also do enhance the number and the quality of service, and also they increase the number of direct bookings that hotels get. So it's an incredible tool. I was looking at it before I joined the company. I really believe in it, and I love it. It's been 2 weeks, but I really think I found the job that I was looking for.
It's so awesome.
It's so cool. So cool. I'm so grateful.
Just to establish. So you spoke to this gentleman in February of 2020.
Yeah.
about potentially working together from a business, from a B2B perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID hits, you guys don't talk between March and whatever time you run the podcast, but obviously he remembered you.
Yep.
You're on the podcast and you're speaking on the podcast and he sees you again. And that's where the connection happens. So that goes back to networking, right? That goes back to developing those
Absolutely.
professional relationships. And we're talking about online phones. LinkedIn is such a big deal right now. And if you have time, if you have the ability to go on LinkedIn and search, just search your role, a company you want to be involved with, a position you want to be involved with, and just start requesting and sending messages and connecting with people. It may not pay off right now,
Mm-hmm.
but it may pay off down the road. And Bianca, you're an exact story of that.
Yeah, no kidding. I was doing this podcast to truly help hotels because I feel that there is so much knowledge that I have that I could be sharing with people. And I was doing that, obviously for nothing. I was just like, hey, I'm here. And I think that's what people should do. And it's funny because I got a lot of hit about that one too, because I was mentioning for technology to help sales. So I didn't talk about business intelligence at the time. So I had a lot of companies kind of angry at me. Oh, you didn't talk about business intelligence. I'm like, oh, sorry. I was just talking about this phase of the booking process. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. And I agree. I think that the opportunity came because I was putting myself out there. I didn't give up. And every interview, every opportunity that I had to showcase my knowledge, to be on one of these platforms that is so big, again, someone can be watching. And it happened to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you take you say you found a company that you feel really passionate about, which is
Yeah.
really the goal, right? But again, we've talked about this from where you were to where you currently are. It was a pretty decent step back. And we've talked in other episodes about being open to that, being open to taking a step back, whether it be to find a new industry, to test out a new department, that people right now especially should not be scared because you can explain it away. Now, you're in a place where you're really happy, but if I'm someone, say I was VP of revenue, and then my next job is restaurant supervisor, right? Well, when I go in for an interview and someone says, well, why did you leave that to go do that? Very explainable. COVID,
Yep.
needed a job. Could be I want to be a GM and I needed F&B experience, and so I wanted to get into that role. I mean, there's a lot of ways to explain that away now, where in the past, it may have come up as a red flag, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
again, you are honestly one of the more knowledgeable people that I know from revenue and distribution, just from talking to you. You have so much knowledge. And when the world came back online, I have no doubt you would have been able to find a position relatively comparable to your previous position in short order. You've chosen to commit to this company, taking that deeper step back, but you have more passion, it sounds like, for this company. So what went into that thought process as you're deciding, I'm going to commit to this, or I'm going to try to ride it out and get a more comparable position?
I realized very early on that things were going to be different. The company that I worked for had 74 hotels in its portfolio, and I saw hotel by hotel and what they were going through. So I think I am fortunate that I could see from a higher level that things were going to be very different. So I knew I was probably not going to be able to be on the same pay rate as before. The position to me was never a big deal, and maybe that's me. I understand some people wanting the VP title or something that they have. That was never a big deal for me, particularly. But the pay, obviously, you make a certain amount, and you have sometimes to take a pay cut. And to me, it was making that transition to an industry that I've never been in. I've been in hospitality my whole life, but in technology, I'm a newbie, so I need to prove myself. And I decided to take that pay cut because I know that I believe in the technology. I know 100% they will continue to be successful. They won best technology for hotel chatbots this year with Hotel Tech Report, and they are about to win again next year. So to me, they were giving me, they were putting their confidence in me. And I never had really experience in technology companies. So
Right.
they, again, I think they trusted me to take this position. At the same time, they're like, we can't pay you at the same scale because you're new to this. And I decided to take it on because, again, I think it's going to pay off. And the financial compensation will eventually come. I really believe it will. But that was a decision that I had to, to take a while to make, because yeah, maybe in 6 months I could have found the same salary that I was earning before, but will it happen?
No
We don't
guarantee.
know.
Yeah.
Right. So every person has a different situation. I don't have kids. I don't have any independence. I'm very fortunate again that my husband kept his job and he's doing okay. And I know not everyone is in the same position to say it's okay, I'll take a pay cut because I want to change careers. It's not the same for everyone. To me, I had this chance and I don't regret it. I think it was, I'm passionate about the job. I'm happy with the company. The company is amazing. And I totally believe that I will get back on my feet, financially to where I was any day. But I was willing to take the risk for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, the money comes with the passion, right? I mean, a lot of times when I'm looking at a job or my people are talking to me about a position that I'm interviewing for, the first question they typically have is, "What's it pay?" And in
Mm-hmm.
truth, that's the last question I typically ask in
Yeah,
interviews. Not because it's trying to be proper or procedural. It's because what else, I'm looking at it as what experience am I going to get? Where am I going to be able to grow? How is this going to move me forward? Because every time I move forward using the skills and the opportunities this position applies to me, that pay is automatically going to bump up. So you taking a step back, taking maybe 2 steps back, as you're shifting into something you're very passionate about, as you develop those skills, that pay will naturally come up, right? And you've already had experience, you've already had success of rising yourself to the top. So I am very confident you won't have any challenge doing that again. Point being is that you had reservations about doing it, but you kind of overcame them and you have a mindset and a goal to what is the end game on this. And that's what I want to kind of relate to people that are out there that are kind of in the weeds, that if you're having a challenge of saying, I'm going to take a step back, I'm going to take 2 steps back, see where the goal you want to be is. And how does that step back influence that goal, right? Listen, again, as you said, everyone's in a different financial situation. So if you have to take a
exactly.
job to take a job, you got to take a job. You got to pay the bills
Yeah,
first and foremost. But if you can take a step back with the idea of, okay, I want to become a GM, I'm going to go become a supervisor at the restaurant versus heading up revenue or sales or front office, there's an end game in mind. So you're not only are you taking a step back, you're at least progressing yourself forward. So
absolutely. And it's so humbling too that, now I don't have anybody under me. I'm not managing any team. I come from managing, a couple of people to managing no one. But it's very humbling too, because then you can see how other people manage and maybe things that you've done for the longest time that you think are right, maybe they're not. So there is a lot to be learned. And I think that people that, take this approach, I'm taking this approach and I really hope that it's going to pay off at the end, that there is a lesson to be learned here. And maybe taking a step back, position, salary, what is it teaching you? What can you learn from it? And to me, on a personal level, also, it taught me the value of money, of things that before it mattered to me. And now they don't really matter that much, So I mean, it's been very, very teaching. This year has been really the best teacher for me.
best and the worst, and I said that. Well, you actually answered a question. My next question I was going to ask you is, coming from someone who is in a position of leadership, in a position, up in that upper level of the chain, to coming back to entry level. How were you handling that? Granted, it's only been 2 weeks, but how are you handling it? But you kind of answered it. It's humbling you in a good way,
Yep.
in a good
Oh
way,
yeah.
and you have, again, the right mindset of what can I learn from this? What can I take out of this versus the mindset of, well, I just got screwed because I was doing so well and it's
Yeah.
not my fault. It all fell apart. And now here I am at entry level. No, you're taking that challenge head on and you're
Takes you nowhere.
Yeah, no, it's, and you're only going to succeed faster with the mindset that you have. This has been I can't believe it's already been 40 minutes we've been talking.
Oh God.
It kind of flew by.
Sorry.
No, that's
Yeah, I
good.
talk a
No,
lot too. Like,
no, it's not about
sorry.
talking a lot. It's that the conversation has been so great. I've been very fortunate in doing this show that all the many of the conversations I have, I'm looking up and I'm like, crap, we're almost out of time already. So Bianca, let's wrap it up here really from someone who, again, has a lot of life experience, from moving countries for a job, switching around different parts of this country, to getting a life that at the time you felt very happy with, and now having all that crumble, to now reestablishing yourself in a career path that you even feel more passionate about.
Yeah.
What would you tell the people out there listening to this show? What would you tell someone who's struggling because they're out of work, struggling because they're overwhelmed with the current work that they have, struggling with the challenge of, do I make a career move? What would you just, what's your overall message to anybody out there?
Stay in touch with what's going on in the industry. Keep reading, keep on LinkedIn, keep making connections, be humble, because the world that we had before is not the world that we will have moving forward. So maybe it's a good time to kind of reevaluate where you want to be and what you want to do. Your confidence is going to be shaken for sure, but don't let that really beat you. Get back up and do it again as many times as needed. There are a lot of good people out there in the market, but just use that as an example for you to keep your A game on. And I think that's motivating, at least for me, to know that I'm competing with really good people. And just have faith, really, again, as cliche as that sounds, have faith in you, have faith in the outcome. Try to see the lesson, because there is a lesson for everyone this year. Everyone in the world has gone through tough time. So what is the lesson? What are you learning from it? And keep on it. I think, again, it's very challenging for a lot of people, but a lot of good things are going to come from this, and I have faith in that. It did for me, and I really hope it happens to you.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I've said it on the show a couple of times. Many people here will, wherever you will be in 10 years, it may not be where you envisioned it being. And you're going to look back and you're going to hopefully be happy with where you are. And you're going to say that only happened because of COVID.
There you
Bianca,
go. Yeah.
When you're heading up the tech department at your current company, you're going to look back and say, I would have still been at my first company probably if COVID didn't happen. And I'm much happier now. So just keep pushing forward. I love it. Well, Bianca, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being my guest. Thank you for being my friend, for more than any of that, and again, being a huge support system for me over the last several months. And I look forward to continuing developing that friendship as we move along.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you everybody that's watching.
Great. Bianca is such an amazing person, and a lot of great knowledge from her there, because again, I truly believe she's, hearing her speak about what she did, she's one of the more knowledgeable people that I've spoken to. And now that she's kind of restarting over, it can be difficult for people to do that. It would be very difficult for me to do that. That's for sure. So if you're in that type of position, try to find that goal. What does that step back do for you? It could just be paying the bills. It could just be getting out of the house, or it could be moving to that next career that you want to be involved with, whether a career position in the current industry you were in or a whole new industry. But more so, what I take away from a lot of what she said is try to find that happiness inside you, whether that's trying a new activity, whether it's rekindling an old passion, whether it's traveling and just doing something that really makes you happy, to find that joy in this cesspool of negativity that we have. Just really, really great words of advice. But thank you all for being my guest once again. We have another great episode coming up next week. Look forward to you joining me again. Subscribe, like, all the good stuff, because I want you guys to get every episode that I put out here. Hopefully it is helping. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much.